and it starts right here. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to Quietly Confident Introvert Podcast, the podcast that empowers introverted women in business and leadership to harness their introvert strengths, to develop quiet confidence, and to create an aligned success pathway to their ambitions. I'm so excited that you're here today, and I'm glad that I keep coming to you and adding value to you. And today it's no different because I'm excited about the topic I'm going to be talking about today and sharing stories along the way of how transformation has happened in my life or in the life of my clients. So today we'll be talking about an introvert's step guide for mastering micro success habits. We know that at the time of this podcast that we are at the stage where the year is coming to an end. And a lot of us might be thinking, oh, wow, how are we achieving our ambitions? How are we achieving our goals? And for me, this is a way of helping to do that. I want to thank you if you're a subscriber for subscribing to my podcast. And if you're not yet a subscriber and you've just stumbled on this, I encourage you to subscribe because you don't want to miss a thing, like Aerosmith says, right? But also, please share this podcast with your friends and those that you know that will benefit from it. Another thing is, I want to invite you to join me on the 24th of September at 7 p.m., where I'll be doing my masterclass, my first masterclass of the year. Can you believe that? But I'm excited. Better late than never, right? So it's going to be talking about how to move from quiet confidence to holistic success. We're going to be looking at those barriers and those errors that introverted women make that stop them from being able to achieve their ambitions. And then we're going to actually be looking at all the things I've been talking about, which is how do you develop that aligned and authentic success pathway to help you achieve those ambitions that you want. So click on the link in the notes or in comments and register free to join me. Once again, welcome and let's dive in into the topic today of an introvert's step guide to mastering micro success habits. I'm sure you've heard the phrase go big or go home. Now, many will say that going big can be a high risk thing, especially if you're introverted, you might feel, oh, sometimes the overwhelm can be an issue, right? And the go big and go or go home can be high risk, high reward strategy. There's a place, in my view, and time for that kind of strategy. However, one of the ways that I have looked at it, and especially because I'm talking about micro success habits and how they have made a difference in my life and the life of my clients, I tend to look at it from a point of view of go micro and hit the home run. I know that sounds interesting, right? But I like to create my own new things and way of looking at things. So go micro and hit the home run. Now, home run comes from baseball. I don't know a lot about baseball. I cannot say that I know the rules around baseball. But when you hit a home run in baseball, basically what it means is that you carrying out what we call, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a home run is a complete and impressive success in an activity. So, I like that definition, and that is why I have said go micro and hit the home run because you want to have ability to succeed as you go along. Most people are so obsessed with the destination, including myself. There have been times I've been obsessed with the destination and refuse to focus on how the journey is treating me and the milestones that I'm making on the way. But also, you can get to that that success path and that destination and be so exhausted and really hate the way that you made that journey. And sometimes there are destinations you get to on the way that actually you realize that what was I thinking? I don't have clarity about that final destination, but where I am right now is beautiful. And that only comes by really taking the time, slowing down, and really looking at things critically. And that's what we want to do. So I want to also remind you as we talk about this today that when it comes to achieving your success goals, It might feel like it's like climbing a mountain, right? And it might be daunting. But the thing with climbing a mountain is that that very first step can be as exhilarating as the last step when you get to the top. But what is good about looking at life from that point of view of climbing a mountain is that your first step leads to the next step, and each compounding step can be recognized as success that allows you to then move on to the next success. And as you go along, you keep understanding yourself and building your strengths. So I'm fascinated by micro success habits because for me, um, life has really thrown me quite a few curveballs, being ill, suffering burnout, and things like that. And this has caused me to go much deeper into how do I harness my strengths for success as an introvert? How do I look at the barriers that hold me back? And more recently, what I've been doing is helping introverted women to look from that same perspective. And the key thing there for me is the fact that if you think about working on your identity before your idea, you are the person that then creates that brilliant idea coming from a place of authenticity, of alignment, and that's all brilliant. Yeah. And so for me, I know that micro success habits really work because I have tried it, I have worked with it, and it all starts with awareness first. When you are very self aware, you can develop the right habits that work for you. And that's the beauty of coaching because many people come to coaching for clarity, but awareness leads to even better clarity. The more I look at the things I'm doing now, I'm thinking, oh, look at how aligned it is to my strengths. Look at how aligned it is to my leadership style. And for many high achieving people who want to make big impact in the world, it can be difficult to kind of think small. And I'm one of those people. I'm a bigger picture person. So for me to be talking to you about micro habits is because I have learned a few things and how that works. But I've also understood that as an introvert, there are certain ways that my brain works, and it's so important for me to be aligned with that and to allow myself to go slow and steady. So let's look at what are the key steps now. I promised steps and to show you. And what I like again is they're micro steps, but with macro impact. And they just three that I want to talk about today. So the first very important step is making the decision. Now, if your dream is big and you want to pursue it and get it going, because big dreams indicate that there's a big change that you think that this will make in your life, right? So, but the thing is, that is when people also decide that because their dream is so big, they cannot make a decision. Yeah. And making that decision is very important. And the thing is, I am 51 now, and I can look back and say, the way my life is now, if I had comprehended it when I was in my 20s, it would have been so massive that I would have thought there is no way that I will get to this space. So I would have made a different kind of decision. What I'm grateful for was I looked at what was within my control. Yeah. And I started to work on it. And I remember that at some point in the office, I was saying to people that I wanted to retire by the time I'm 50. And when I said that, immediately I said that, I kind of like thought, what's wrong with you? And I thought people be thinking, what's really wrong with you that you be thinking that who are you coming to retire at 50? What does that really mean? But when I made that statement, it was more out of like a deep desire that was trying to materialize and come true. And I was now letting people know, that I wanted to pursue a different life. And it was big. It didn't look like anybody around me was doing that. So that was another thing. It felt like it came out of the blue. And obviously, as soon as I said it, it felt dreadful. I felt like people would look at me funny and all that, but it helped me make big decisions. It helped me make big decisions and start taking the little steps that I needed to take, I was able to start following through and clarifying what I meant by retire at 50. And now I can tell you that it's not necessarily that I will never walk again, but I was looking at my life and going, I seem to have this strong desire to do something for myself, and I keep postponing it. So it was like making a decision that the ultimatum is 50. When I turn 50, if I am still sitting on the fence, I am going to take action. I'm going to take action. Yeah. And I'm going to take action and leave working for anybody else and start working for myself. That for me was the definition of retirement. And guess what? I was saying that, and by the age of 43, I achieved it. So here is something that Oprah Winfrey says, and I'll read that for you. She said, "Nothing happens until you decide. Make a decision and watch your life move forward." So, and we can learn a thing or two from Oprah Winfrey, right? In fact, Oprah Winfrey is my inspiration when it comes to developing habits and longevity and perseverance. So, when you make a decision, again, one of the things I learned earlier in my journey, in my personal development journey, my first personal development conference that I attended was run by John Maxwell. And he said, actually, the decision is stronger when you actually say it out loud, when you say it out loud, and be courageous and say it out loud. Say that decision that you have made. And I know people might laugh at you. And that brings me to step two. Step two is determination. You have said it, you have made it happen. You now need to make it happen, right? You now need to make it happen. So another of my mentors that really impacted my life, his name is Paul Martinelli. He was a janitor who became a multimillionaire, and he was really the person that set up the Maxwell leadership team at the time. And I again, it's this same conference. That conference was really, and he was there, and he said, God is always conspiring for your greater good. And when he said that, I thought, conspiring, what did that mean? And being a person of faith, what I've come to realize is your potential might be hidden from you, but it's not hidden from your creator. It is as clear as the sun rises every day. And God treats our potential really like an investment. So, for those again who are people of the Christian faith, you can go and read the parable of the talents. He treats our life like an investment that He has made for us to realize our potential and to achieve the things that we want to achieve. So no sooner had I become aware of this, my deepest desires, and looking at my current circumstance, I really began to move forward towards it. I really began to find courage within myself. So that second micro step really is that determination. And guess what? When my mentor obviously say God is conspiring, you might think that that means that everything is going to happen smoothly. Well, no, it didn't. Not for me. One of the real catalysts that helped me to actually speed up my decision, actually two catalysts, came from me losing my mom and then me losing my brother-in-law. And during that period, I started to think these people had big dreams, they had big goals, but they're not here to fulfill it. So why am I hanging on? Why am I wasting time? You know, so I found the courage. The first thing I did was actually I was sitting on the fence about doing my professional qualifications. Everybody else was not doing it. They didn't feel they needed it. But every time I was coming up against the barrier and I was looking at how do I get out of this space without another layer of achievement added to what I already have. It was looking like that was a barrier and I needed to take that off. So even though I had lost my mom, I wrote my last final paper. She was sick when I started the exams and I was hopeful, but then she died. And I decided that the way to honor the fact that she's no longer here to fulfill those big ambitions was for me to go ahead and fulfill mine. And the first step was for me to empower myself where I'm at. So I was determined in my grief. I barely made it, but I passed. And that was the beginning. And I started to use this. And I started to use this. The other thing is, I started as well, interestingly, knowing how much I was grieving. The thing is, when things like this happen, you don't realize that you kind of revert to type to cope, right? So I became even more introverted. I wanted a quiet space because I was always thinking and I was always in a deep, dark place, no matter how I tried. But that was a great benefit for me because I could introspect and I could plan and use my superpowers of introspection. And it was during this time I really started to transform my mind. My actions started to be more solid. And I started to evaluate my environment. Is it a growth environment? Is it right for me? And the thing that also I have to say that things happen for a reason. I became more courageous because sometimes you think, what's the worst that could happen? At that point in time, the worst that could happen to me had already happened to me, right? In a sense. I'd lost my mom, I'd lost an uncle, and I really needed help. So during this period as well, during the period of my mom's ill health and everything, I I found a book by Zig Ziglar, and it's the book titled "See You at the Top." Um, Ordinarily, I wouldn't have seen myself at the top. There were a lot of things going on, difficult times at work and everything. But, you know, the courage to start exploring a way out, the courage to start exploring the opportunity that I was not using became greater. And I stumbled on this book, which was a blessing. And in it, he says this, he says, I believe success is achieved by ordinary people with extraordinary determination. And I love that quote because guess what? Although I felt ordinary, although I felt my challenges were there, this for me was just taking little steps along the way and saying, I'm going to do things that seem hard so that life will be easier in future. And so that's the next step. The second one is the delivery. So once you've made the decision and you're determined to follow through, the next thing is how do you go about getting this sorted for yourself? That's where the delivery comes in, right? And I'm glad that I don't have to do a lot of work to share the insights for this with you because I'm a great student of James Clear, who is the author of Atomic Habits. And the key thing with delivery and when you make something micro and when you think about awareness is developing the right habits that will help you to get over and cross over and achieve what you want to achieve. So here's what James Clear says. He says, your habits are how you embody your identity. The most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do. So, and we all know that the truth about it is we think our ambitions about buying that big house, but by the time we get there, when we look back, what we really wanted is to discover that person that did not yet exist. So the way to change ourselves, to change our lives, is to think about how how we become that person, and the most practical way is to change the way you do things every day. So, and these are the three key ways that James Clear suggests that we do that we develop the delivery of that decision we have made, and we use our determination in micro ways. So he says you start with a version of the habit that is incredibly easy for you. It must be so easy that you can't say no to doing it, and so easy that it's not difficult at all in the beginning. Isn't that music to your ears? It's music to my own ears. I love the word easy because once you think about easy, it means actually, yeah, what's the easiest, simplest thing I can do? For me, for example, 30 minutes of exercise can be very daunting, but 15 minutes, that's not too bad. And one of the things my own coach says to me is that what you do is that your brain is very clever. When you suggest to your brain and go, "Oh, I'm going to start exercising today," your brain will find all sorts of discomfort images to share with you of how exercise is hard. But if you say, "Oh, I'm only just going to do 15 minutes," this is about leading your life, right? Your brain thinks, "Well, yeah, 15 minutes might not be that hard. Let's give it a go." So, and that's what James Clear is saying here. make it the easiest version of that habit and start. Then he says, increase the habit. The number two is then you increase the habit each day and in an incredibly small way as well. So, what I would say is for me, actually, I don't subscribe to that as much. And that's because I think that increasing the habits gradually, like maybe in weeks instead of in days, works for me better. And it might be that you can do it in days. That's fine. I prefer looking at micro managing myself in quotes in weeks. If another person is micromanaging you, you hate it. But in this scenario, you're micromanaging yourself to develop and master success habits. So he says increase it, but in an incredibly small way. One of the things I made a mistake when I was really into my fitness as well was I would go swimming. I started off swimming, just learning to swim. And then when I started using it for exercise, I will start and I will just be celebrating 10 lengths across the pool. I jumped from 10 to 30 and I was really gunning for it. Everybody around me was doing marathons, Ironman, and everything. So I was in a good environment that was encouraging me. The next thing I knew, I jumped from 30 lengths to 100. I can tell you that that really crashed my body. And when I started saying it to one of my friends who is kind of like a pro athlete and did a lot of Ironman and things, he said, patience. In the sports world, they say 10% increase at a time. That is like 3,000% increase or whatever you might call it with what you have just done from 30 to 100. That's a lot, you know. And I didn't think about it. I was just thinking, I want to push myself. But here, it's music to our ears that when you're developing habits and when you're turning off the autopilot, when you're trying to understand yourself, then it's best to do it slow and do it small in gradual increments. And the last one he says, even after increasing your habit, all repetitions must remain easy. The total habit should be broken down into easier pieces if needed. So he keeps using the word easy and he keeps saying breaking things down. And I think that's the key. That's the micro. That's where it comes from. So important that we remember. And for introverts, when you read Susan Cain's book, and I encourage you to read that. In fact, she did so much research in it. It took her 7 years to write it. What a gift to the world for introverts. And she's not advocating that you should see yourself as weak, but appreciating the challenges you have along the way. And she talks about how things happen for us, the way that the introvert's brain is wired, and sometimes how information moves across and may be slower through the longer network than for an extrovert. So you process information slower. Some of those things mean that it's useful for us to consider how we can love ourselves by going slower, by making things smaller, by breaking things down into easy, small, bitty steps. So that's why I said go micro and hit the home run. So that is what I have for you today. And I'm so glad that you've taken the time to join me today. And just as a recap, I want to say that the first step in developing micro success habits is to make a decision. I know that we catastrophize as introverts, but make that decision. Once you make that decision, understand how you can be determined. That's step two. Be determined to achieve that thing that you've decided you want to do. And the third thing is deliver it in micro steps, in micro ways, through following the principle of, first of all, find the smallest element of that thing that you want to do. And then the second thing is repeating it on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, whichever interval works for you. And the third thing is increasing it as you go along and each repetition making it simple and possible for you to do. And usually, as I always say, we leave with a quote. But what we've done in this episode is we've shared a few quotes. And I would want to repeat those quotes because I think that they really, really will send the message home. So, the first quote here, when it comes to making a decision, So make a decision, first step. And Oprah says, nothing happens until you decide. Make a decision and watch your life move forward. Then we have determination, and determine to do that which you have decided. And Zig Ziglar says, I believe success is achieved by ordinary people with extraordinary determination. And then we come to James Clear, who talks about the fact that you need habits, and that is delivering that which you are determined to achieve. And he says, your habits, how you embody your identity, the most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do. So I have a final icing on the cake one for you, and that is by Robin Sharma. And he sums up this episode nicely for me when he says, dream big, start small, and act now. So don't forget to check out the link to the masterclass on how to move from quiet confidence to holistic success. I would love to see you. I would love to spend some time with you and make a difference and add value to you. So click on the link for the free masterclass and join me. But also, I just don't want you to forget that you are special as an introvert. You have a lot to offer the world. So cultivate that quiet confidence and embrace courageous leadership, whether it's self leadership or taking the chance to lead others, to propel your career and business forward. And I hope that you can keep connecting with me to be your guide along the way and to support you on creating your aligned and authentic success pathway. Thank you for joining me today on this transformational conversations that we've had together. Take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Quietly Confident Introverts. If you found today's discussion valuable, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with others. You can also connect with me, Patience Ogunbona, at The Visionary Introverted Woman. Until next time, stay confidently introverted.